you know, a hard and fast rule, and I'll be in trouble, but however, I must make an exception to thanking individuals.
In opening the centre, Mr Morris praised all those involved the community well for their efforts. He also pointed out the part played by the community employment program in paying 5 long-term unemployed people to renovate their homes. The program started in 1979 and the group of parents decided to offer intellectually handicapped funds and all who did, and they were charged with structured learning for providers. New Zealand has started a literacy program as well as a life skills scheme, so that where possible the clients will be able to thrive in the community alone. This makes a great weight from Lieutenant Torres, as honorary president of New Zealand, Mr Barbara Burrows explained.
Well, it's the thing that keeps parents awake at 2 o'clock in the morning, because we all know that someday this is going to happen. So we're trying to do as much as we can for each person, that when that does happen, that they will be able to fit into another situation. The big problem there is where they're going to go, because we're not having living in, and it's hostels that are a great thing following up. But we'll provide day training, that sort of thing.
The ministers were on hand to explain the intricacies of the plan so far, that is, a federally funded major road link direct from Doyleson to Beresfield. This route has been chosen over an older plan to Branxton because the highway would now take North Coast holiday traffic. Mr Morris said the importance of the highway to this region cannot be overlooked.
This strategy, if we can get it into place and adhere to a construction timetable, an upgrading timetable, would, I believe, have the greatest economic impact upon this region of any major development in the region since probably the establishment of BHP in 1915.
While no one doubts the wisdom of a national highway west of the lake, it's the feeder roads into populated areas like Morisset, Toronto, Cardiff and Wallsend which are controversial. There was much advice for the politicians from locals about this state-funded part.
That's where the real trouble is now. The people on either side cannot get onto that road because there's no traffic lights, there's nothing to let them out. You might wait 20 minutes there and still can't get on it now. Well,
however, Mr Morris says many people are reacting to the old plan, where the highway would have ended for the time being at Wallsend.
The confusion about access to Wallsend was based upon the old plan, where it was intended the national highway terminus would virtually end at Wallsend, and that would be the case till the end of the century. This strategy we're putting forward now is for the national highway to bypass Wallsend, go straight through along the upgraded Minmi Road to the New England Highway by 1988, so that the access from the Sellville beyond Wallsend through the national highway means that a lot of the traffic that was contemplated years ago would go into Wallsend would not, under this strategy, go into Wallsend. It's a quite different picture.
The public meetings, the first at Wallsend on Thursday evening, are designed to allow for public input into the feeder road routes. State Minister Brereton says this public input is vital.
I would expect to be in a position to have all the options in front of me by late November of this year, and then we'd be in a position to make some decisions as to the alternative route early next year.
And so you've been listening to the people too before then?
I think it's vitally important that we get some consensus from local people, and that's why I think the public processes, such as that commenced today, are very valuable in helping the decision makers.
First stop for the three-person delegation was the Working Women's Centre at Mayfield. It's just one of the places where the committee will be canvassing the Women's Health Policy Review Committee was instigated by the Deputy Premier, Mr Ron Mueller. It will examine the health services currently on offer in the state and assess how they can be altered to cater better for the needs of women. Tomorrow morning at the Newcastle Workers Club and the East Maitland Bowling Club, the committee is inviting members of the public to come forward to discuss health services in the region, sessions they are hoping will help pinpoint any inadequacies.
At this stage, we are
gathering information. We've come to Newcastle and are going to the Upper Hunter to hear from people what's needed. It's difficult, therefore, to preempt our conclusions. I think it's fair to say that in this region there is a great need for many more community-based services. There's, relatively speaking, the Hunter region is not well off in terms of community nursing services for elderly geriatric services, family planning services, adolescent mental health services. I know enough about the region to say that there is a lack in all of those areas, and you have a growing population here, particularly in the upper Hunter area.
You say the Hunter is one of the worst off regions in the state. Could the Hunter then expect to do well out of this committee?
We would hope so, absolutely.
Max Lamond has kept turning up in Newcastle during his long and distinguished police career. After doing service in Broken Hill, he came to Newcastle in 1956 as a scientific investigator. After being shifted around the state, he returned to Newcastle in 1975 as the Chief of Detectives. Then, for the third and final time in November 1982, Max Lamond was promoted to District Detective Inspector. But at age 56, Max has decided to take his early retirement option.
Max, although you've seen 35 years active service in the force, you still had some years to go before you reached the official retiring age. Why have you decided to announce your retirement now?
I think, John, that I have enjoyed every minute that I've had in the police force, but I feel that it's about time that I gave a little bit of my time to the family. In recent years, and perhaps more specifically in the last 5 years, I have in fact seen very little of my family in the different areas that I have worked at, internal affairs and here. And I just feel that it's an appropriate time for me to call it quits.
It's obviously a different force today than it was when you first started. What do you think are the major changes you've seen in the force in the recent years?
Well, I can recall when we used to do safe patrols, and that is safe robbery prevention patrols on push bikes. And today, of course, you have helicopters, you have fixed-winged aircraft, you have women in the force who are carrying out every phase of duty and performing this duty in a superb manner. And in addition to that, we have the police board, which I think initially the average policeman was concerned that it was an intrusion into our police life. But today, I think most police realise that it is going to be an asset to the job.
Days when everyone had surfboards that were nearly 10 feet long and had just one fin. The days when a trip to the beach meant a beach party, complete with the music of the Beach Boys and dancing. And the 60s, the days when the art of the so-called wipeout was almost as important as surfing. The competition will continue tomorrow morning. In the New Malibu section, Newcastle's Steve Butterworth and Peter Cornish finished first and third respectively. And in the Golden Oldies event, the over 35 section, Newcastle's Terry Taylor and Rod Rudder finished second and third.
At this afternoon's meeting, employees resolved to report to the Labor Council tomorrow with a 6-point resolution to deal with the proposed superannuation changes. According to the President of the Salary Division of the Hunter District Water Board's Employees Association, Mr Lance Woods, workers are dissatisfied with the new scheme, announced last week and to be phased in by July next year. Mr Woods said the new scheme bears little relation to the package that had been negotiated between the state government and the Combined Public Services Association during the last 4 years.
I'll affect the Hunter District Water Board employees that are contributors to the state superannuation scheme the same as they'll affect every other public servant in the state, and that is that they'll reduce the overall remuneration package of entitlement at the age of retirement for every public servant in the state.
How severely will employees' entitlements be restricted?
As far as the package of amendments is concerned, there is what is known as a taper effect, which actually erodes the retirement pension in the superannuation scheme to the point where it is virtually worthless at the end of a person's retirement life.
Why do you think the state government has decided to change the existing scheme?
There's a cost factor involved in it, and the government's changing the existing scheme, and they're not being very truthful about both sides of the argument.
The new complex will be a far cry from the old one. The original 6-lane pool had to be replaced as officials said was falling apart. Steel frames in the wall of the pool had rusted, weakening the walls and allowing water to leak through. Initial plans for the new complex include an 8-lane pool suitable to stage Australian championships, a toddlers, a learners and a dieting pool and a new grandstand. $586,000 was allocated to the project, but it was found there was not enough money to cover construction of the diving pool and the new grandstand. Work on the new pool began in early August at the old pool, and 2 months later, the complex is more than beginning to take shape. One feature especially is good news for the area's disabled. Both the main pool and the women's pool will contain concrete ramps to enable people in wheelchairs to access the shallow end. Neighbouring Council senior engineer Mr Greg Underwood says pool contractors are working towards season in time for Christmas school holidays.
Those attending the Stop Work meeting today represented about 70% of the ancillary staff at schools in the Lower Hunter: teachers' aides, librarians' aides and clerical staff. Their decision to strike was not taken lightly, but was sparked by what they see as the state government's consistent failure to increase their numbers in schools. 2 working parties under previous Education Ministers Lander and Mulock had come to the conclusion that more ancillary staff is needed, but while they offered sympathy, the Public Service Association says they offered little else.
Since 1975, there's been no increase in ancillary staffing, whereas there's been an increase in the work they're required to do. There have been extra teachers put on, English as a second language teachers, transitional education teachers, changes in the curriculum, introduction of new financial management. As a result of this, the workload has been put onto ancillary staff without any increase in the numbers.
Now yet another working party, this time for the new minister, Mr Cavalier, is investigating the problem. 120 extra clerical positions have been temporarily created, but the PSA says it's not enough. Like others around the state, this meeting voted to demand a considerable increase in ancillary staff and asked for guarantees that all present officials will be paid. They called for one of the return to work until Monday.
Because this is only a short strike, it will not seriously affect the ability of public schools to teach their students.
Meanwhile, if ancillary staff receive no satisfaction from the state government, they will strike again on November the 22nd.
Many of which have registered record sales. Although it's 19 years since the car fair opened, the Garden City complex as such has been established for only 10, and for thousands of shoppers, the event was celebrated in style. The 1984 Newcastle Rugby League Award was announced at the City Hall.
I'd like to thank all the boys from North Newcastle. Rugby league's a team game, and without them, well, I wouldn't be up here now.
At the end of the season, on the points table, Higgins scored a total of 7.8466, his closest rivals being Rick Patrick and Mick Pittman, both of Curry Curry.
I'm sure you'll enjoy it looking after it.
I've given them a hard time, some of the guys this year. A lot of them have had to change their ways of life and change their football attitudes. For some it was very hard. At the end, I think most of them agree it was all worthwhile.
Nearly 100 prawn fishermen attended 2 meetings yesterday to discuss problems they've been experiencing with the industry. At the first meeting, chaired by the member for Maitland, Mr Alan Walsh, and attended by the member for Waratah, Mr John Price, the Chief Inspector of the Division of Fisheries in Sydney, Mr Frank Bonza, and the Secretary of the Fish Marketing Authority, Mr Brian Skepper, the main problems facing local fishermen were outlined. But it wasn't until the second meeting that the fishermen resolved many of their grievances. They voted to limit trawling in the Hunter River to boats under 9 metres, with concessions for the larger boats, and for the use of only one 11-metre net or 2 5.5-metre nets by bigger boats. They also voted to nominate Mr Red Tide for election to the boards of the Fish Marketing Authority and the Newcastle Fishermen's Cooperative, and for a proposal for a packaging shed at Raymond Terrace to be put before the board of the Fishermen's Cooperative. Fishermen say they will be holding another meeting in the near future at Nelson Bay to press for the opening of Port Stephens. The Harley Medical Centre in Sydney charges $1,500 for the treatment, which employs a technique known as chemical face peeling. A solution containing phenyl or carbolic acid is applied to the face, which is then covered with strips of surgical tape. The tape remains in place for 48 hours. It's then removed and the superficial layers of old skin peeled away with it. The director of the Sydney clinic, who declined to be named for ethical reasons, claims although the treatment can't stop ageing, it can make patients look 10 years younger. However, not all skin types respond to the treatment, and because of the use of carbolic acid, there are circumstances under which it isn't recommended.
There are some circumstances, a person that has severe heart disease or liver disease or kidney disease.
Because of the risk of scarring, the treatment isn't recommended to the eyelids or the neck, but isn't this where the worst signs of ageing show?
They certainly do occur around the eye, and they're tightened up there with the treatment. We do not do the neck because of the scarring, and if a person needs the neck done, then they need a surgical facelift.
In this Newcastle warehouse, all the king's horses and all the king's men have been putting Humpty together again, from the drawings of designer James Bennett. The huge Humpty was loaded on this truck this morning for its short but spectacular trip to the Civic Theatre. All the King's Men is a musical by Richard Rodney Bennett, based on the famous nursery rhyme and the historic English episode which inspired it. It's being staged by the group responsible for last year's production of Noah's Flood, which involved hundreds of school children. This time, 250 children will sing and act on the Civic Theatre stage, designed to look like a giant Punch and Judy booth. And at its centre will be the towering face of Humpty Dumpty.
The invitation tournament has drawn a large field, with 48 triples teams or some 144 bowlers taking part. Amongst the field are many of